Hey everyone, I'm Victoria from Lemons Lyme. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking all about my diet, which is a bit confusing, but this has been a really highly requested video, so I'm here to finally make it. This is probably going to be a little long, so I'm just going to jump right in. I, as you saw from the title, eat a low FODMAP, nightshade free, low carb and sugar, non-fermentable food, Autoimmune Paleo rotation diet. Wow, that was a mouthful. I'm going to go over what each of those labels means, why I eat the way I eat, how I figured out what to eat for my body, and all that fun stuff. So let's go for it. First things first, I eat a paleo-based diet. That is the foundation of my diet, of the protocols I follow. It's paleo. And there's so much information online about the paleo diet and what it is. I can make a whole video about that. I'm going to give you a brief overview. The idea is to eliminate processed food, inflammatory foods, foods our bodies are not meant to be digesting and eating, to return to a diet that our Paleolithic ancestors followed for health and well-being. So it eliminates all grains, not just glutinous grains, but all grains, dairy, sugar, processed foods, legumes, including peanuts, and a lot of higher sugar, higher carb foods, even fruits and certain vegetables. So, and then people do variations on that, depending on like if they're athletes or what they tolerate or don't tolerate, but that's like the basis of it. I'll include a link below just of what a paleo diet is. If you've been following me for a while, you know I follow that. All my recipes are paleo based. They have been for years. They are on my Instagram and my blog. So that shouldn't be too new unless you're new to my channel. Welcome. So I'm going to go through each of of the labels. So let's start with low FODMAP. I eat a low FODMAP diet. Low FODMAP, or FODMAP, stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So basically fermentable sugars, high sugar foods, highly fermentable foods in your gut. I'm going to link below the low FODMAP paleo foods list that I follow, and I'll have a picture on the screen as well so you can kind of follow along as I talk about it a little bit. People and myself follow a low FODMAP diet when you deal with SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO is basically where you have an overgrowth of bacteria in your small intestine. Your small intestine actually doesn't contain a ton of, it has some bacteria, whole digestive system does, but it doesn't contain a ton, because the idea is that most foods are being absorbed in your small intestine, and then your large intestine has a lot of bacteria. It's kind of like the overgrowth of your bacteria from your large intestine get into your small intestine where they're not supposed to be. They cause a lot of IBS type symptoms, bloating, gas, constipation or the runs, and then kind of systemic symptoms and inflammation from there. And so I've dealt with SIBO, and I deal with relapses of it. So I try and follow a low FODMAP diet. I'll reintroduce higher FODMAP foods, and if I feel SIBO coming back, I'll go back to low FODMAP diet. So I generally follow low FODMAP. I have started to reintroduce higher FODMAP foods on occasion and in smaller amounts as I handle them. SIBO can lead to malabsorption issues, which I deal with because if you've been following me for a while, you know I have a lot of gut issues. A lot of my symptoms and problems stem from there, and so my goal is to heal my gut, which is why my diet is so specific right now. That is what I deal with. SIBO isn't as common in society or as well known. It's becoming more well known as kind of could be a cause of intestinal issues, not just candida, but SIBO as well. And so following low FODMAP is important for me because it does reduce those symptoms, and I really notice it. I have treated SIBO both with drugs and herbals, but it's important to do the diet along with those things. And so I've gone through all of that, and now usually just doing the diet alone when I feel a flare-up is helpful enough. I don't have to get back on a lot of drugs or herbals or supplements and things. All right, next thing, nightshade free. I also eat nightshade free. So nightshades are a family of plants that include things like tomatoes, eggplant, potatoes, peppers, anything in the pepper family from ground pepper, red pepper to bell peppers. So any type of pepper, goji berries, ashwagandha, which is an herb that a lot of people will use for various symptoms, especially in the chronic illness community. I never take it, and that is why. I don't tolerate it. So nightshade intolerance is also another one that's not super well known, but is can be a major contributor of things like headaches, systemic inflammation, mouth burning, things like that. People have loads of different symptoms when it comes to nightshades, but I essentially figured out I was intolerant to nightshades a couple years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. I got really serious about it 3 years ago because it became really popular in the paleo and kind of holistic health food intolerance realm that nightshades could be an issue. You know, if you're having symptoms, cut out nightshades. And I was like, okay, I'll just cut them out and see what happens. You know, it's not a ton of foods. It wasn't a huge deal. And so I cut out nightshades for a really extended period of time. I had been eating a lot of tomatoes especially and goji berries, and I would notice a lot of bloating and headaches afterwards after I'd eat those foods. And so I cut them out for a really extended period of time. When I tried to reintroduce them, I would get symptoms like bloating or digestive distress or whatever, and I was like, I am definitely intolerant to nightshades. Tomatoes really do it for me. Like, I cannot touch tomatoes and goji berries. Those are two of the big ones. I've gotten to a point where I had cut them out for so long, and I've now reintroduced bell peppers and potatoes in small amounts on occasion. I can handle those two things. Bell peppers better than potatoes, but little bits here and there don't kill me, and I can tolerate those a little bit now after having cut them out and let my body heal from that, my gut heal from that, and readjust. Next thing, I eat a low carb / sugar diet. This means I rarely eat fruit. I eat lower carb vegetables. I do, especially in the winter, eat more high carb things like squashes and sweet potatoes, but not a ton because the carbs for me, I know it's different for everyone. You know, some people do great with them, but for me, I notice they really feed my symptoms. They feed the Lyme, they feed the bacteria and viruses I have in my system. They feed the SIBO and Candida, and so eating low sugar and low carb, not super low carb, I'm not like ketogenic or anything, but eating a relatively low sugar and low carb diet does help with especially my gut symptoms, and then systemic symptoms that can flare from gut disruption. I do eat some fruit, not a lot, but if I do, it's low sugar, low glycemic fruit like berries. Occasionally have a banana here or there, half a banana in a smoothie, but it's not a staple of my diet. I rarely eat, a lot of fruit or fruit in general. So that's specifically like Lyme related and healing from, bugs and viruses and things that will feed off of sugars. So got that out of the way. The next thing is that I don't eat any fermented foods or glutamine containing foods, which includes collagen and bone broth. I actually have a whole blog post on this, so I'm not going to get into it in this video. I'm going to link that blog post below, but I had my genetics evaluated by a nutrigenomic specialist, so they were nutritionally evaluated. I found out I had intolerance to fermented foods and glutamine, and I've always noticed that when I ate bone broth or I ate fermented foods like fermented cabbage and stuff, I would have the worst gut symptoms. I could not tolerate this stuff, and I thought, oh, it's just like, they're so great. They're supposed to be healing for your gut lining. I need to be eating them. Maybe it's just a need to start with smaller amounts, and it didn't matter how little I ate of it. It would cause disruption, and I realized, oh, I have an issue with it. So now I don't feel so bad not eating fermented foods and glutamine. Anyways, whole blog post on it. You can check that out below and read more about why I don't eat those things and how my genetics relate to that. Next, I eat Autoimmune Paleo. So Autoimmune Paleo is basically a stricter version of the Paleo Diet that eliminates foods that are still included in the Paleo Diet but can be inflammatory to some people, especially those predisposed to autoimmune conditions or who have autoimmune conditions. The idea is that by eliminating some of these foods that can be inflammatory to sensitive people, you're increasing immune function and reducing gut inflammation that can contribute to autoimmune disease. So it's paleo to the next level. It eliminates nuts and seeds, even seed-based herbs like cumin, eliminates eggs, chocolate, alternative sweeteners like stevia and xylitol, which are shit anyways and really disruptive to your gut lining. I don't advise eating those things to begin with, whether you're paleo or not paleo or anything. Don't eat them. But I have attempted autoimmune paleo diet multiple times in the past because I do deal with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. Lyme tends to mimic autoimmune conditions and can develop into autoimmune conditions. But I freaking love almond butter. Like, that is my bae. Almond butter is life. And so I love just like nuts and seeds. And so they're really great for snacking, and I like cooking with them and whatever. But I have finally gone gung-ho on the autoimmune paleo diet after some food allergy testing that I had done. I'm going to link below. I'm going to have a link for each of these parts of my diet so you can read more about them if you're interested. I'm going to have an autoimmune paleo link below so you can read more about what that is, what to eliminate. Again, it's not for life. Autoimmune paleo is the idea you cut it out for usually 6 to 8 months, depending on how much healing you have to do, and then you slowly introduce one food at a time to see what you do and don't tolerate, as I did with the Nightshades. But I recently had both food allergy and food intolerance testing done. I'm going to review those in just a moment. And I learned that I have an allergy to almonds, pistachios, which I knew, hazelnuts, and sesame seeds. And like actually true allergy to those foods, and I like lived off almond butter. So it was actually kind of weird because I didn't get typical allergic reactions. I had systemic reactions, like inflammation and gut issues, whatever. But and that kind of was like a kick in the butt for me, be like, you need to do the autoimmune paleo. And you have an autoimmune disease, just do it. So I'm very externally motivated. So until I see like that science and those test results, I won't. It's really hard for me to like stick to something or be motivated to do something. But seeing that on paper of like, you actually like scientifically, your immune system is responding in a negative way. And I was like, okay, I need to go AIP. So that's what AIP is, autoimmune paleo. So with my immunologist, I had food allergy testing and food sensitivity testing. They are different. Let me review them. Food allergy testing tests for IgE antibodies, immunoglobulin E antibodies. These are an immediate response, what you think of as your typical allergy, whether that's seasonal allergies, runny nose, itchy eyes, whatever, to pollens, or dogs or cats or whatever, or like a peanut allergy. That's a true food allergy, which is an IgE response. So I had blood testing for those, and that was the almonds and some of those other nuts and seeds, true allergy for. And then I had food intolerance testing, which tests your IgG, immunoglobulin G response, which are antibodies that provide long-term resistance. Those antibodies build up over time with increased and prolonged exposure to something. So this is actually food intolerance testing. There's a lot of controversy about it. I use it, I really think you need to use it as a roadmap, not a end-all be-all, because typically food allergy testing, your results are going to be that you're sensitive to the foods that you eat most often. So if you eat chicken every day, you're probably gonna come up with that on the food sensitivity testing, because your immune system's constantly bombarded by it, and it's slowly built up these IgG antibodies. Food intolerance testing is kind of like, it's not an end-all be-all. It's like, all right, I'm eating too much of this. I need to kind of adjust my diet, or you feel okay with this food still, and that's all right. You know, it's much more variable than a food allergy. And that's why I think that food intolerance testing can still be beneficial, because you can be like, oh, whoa, I didn't realize I was eating so much coconut or whatever it is. I should back off. Now, your food intolerance testing can say, like mine did, I have no issues with almonds. That's because I don't have an IgG response. I have a true allergy response to it. So there's a difference there. It was beneficial for me to do both, the food allergy and food intolerance testing or food sensitivity testing. But a lot of times, if you're sensitive to foods on the IgG, the food sensitivity testing, you can do a rotation diet. And that's why I actually do a rotation diet already, is because I know that if I eat the same thing all the time, I begin to develop a response to it and intolerance to it, even if it's a healthy food like kale. So that's the last bit of my diet, is I follow a rotation diet. I don't follow a true rotation diet, which is usually like a 4-day rotation, where if you eat a food on Monday, you can't eat again for 4 days, so you can't eat it again until Friday. Like if you eat chicken on Monday, you won't eat that meat again until Friday. I don't follow a true rotation diet because it's too hard for me. I have enough limitations as it is. I deal with a chronic illness, and to be cooking a different meal every single day is too much. I need to batch cook so that I only have to cook a couple times a week, and then I have food to last me. So what I do is a three-day rotation where I will eat the same thing for 3 days. Then I'll eat something different for the next 3 days, and on the 7th day, I'll eat totally different foods than I ate those past 6 days. So for example, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I will eat, let's say I'll choose turkey and pork as my proteins, sweet potatoes, kale, and zucchini as my vegetables. And I'll eat those 5 foods in different varieties for each meal. And then for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I will have chicken and beef as my proteins, and then spinach, sweet parsnips, and carrots as my vegetables, and I'll eat those in different varieties for each meal. I spice things up by using different herbs. And then on the 7th day, on that Sunday, I will eat totally different things. So I will eat butternut squash, maybe I'll eat fish usually, and a couple other veggies I hadn't eaten during the week, jicama and rutabaga or something like that. So I rotate in that manner, if that made sense. Anyways, so I just said I went AIP because of my food allergy testing, but my food intolerance testing, I wasn't super intolerant to a lot of foods, and so I'm just going to eliminate a couple things, or rotate better a couple things that I did seem to react to, but like I said, I use it more as a guide map than an end-all be-all. And my results were less daunting than I thought. So basically what I'm doing with the rest of my diet seems to be working in terms of food intolerance reactions. And so there's just a couple things on that list that I do eat a lot of, like green peas, that will be eliminated for a few months. It's not a big deal, 1 or 2 more foods to kind of cut out for a little bit and play with in terms of reintroduction. That was a lot, I know. This video is long, I'm sorry, but that's my diet. A lot of this is also trial and error. So there are Nightshade foods, there are low FODMAP foods, there are high FODMAP foods that I do or don't tolerate. There are low FODMAP foods I don't tolerate, like tomatoes, because they're Nightshade. There are high FODMAP foods like coconut that I do tolerate. And so, these are all guidelines. Everything and every diet I've talked about are all guidelines. There are foods approved on the Autoimmune Paleo diet, like garlic and onion, that are high FODMAP that I don't tolerate. And so you have to play around with it. It's a little bit of trial and error. You can choose one of these or pick out what you want and do things strictly, and then kind of play around, do it strict for a couple weeks and be like, okay, this is or isn't working for me. What's something I feel like sets me off, or what's something that I think I tolerate okay that's not on this list. And then I didn't jump into all of this right away. These were steps by steps over the years. And this is where my diet's at now. I started with paleo 6 years ago. I eliminated nightshades like 3 or 4 years ago. I went low FODMAP about a year and a half ago. I found out about the fermentable foods 6 months ago. And then I just went autoimmune paleo a couple weeks ago. And so this has been years and steps to figuring out what I think might help heal my gut and be the appropriate diet for me. So that's just like, and I just did all this food allergy and intolerance testing. And so, it's baby steps. Don't feel like you have to jump into everything. Start with a food or a food group, or, start with paleo, and go from there. I don't want to get this video to be too long. So if you want me to talk more about any of these things in a separate video, let me know in the comments. If you have questions about my diet, let me know in the comments as well, and I will answer them, or I'll make another video, follow-up video about all of this. I can talk more about the food testing, intolerance versus allergy, more about autoimmune paleo, whatever it is, let me know. But I hope this video was helpful and useful. I have so many recipes on my blog and on my Instagram, which will be right here, where you can follow along and see what to eat on a day-to-day and really get to understand like what I'm eating and how I make all these labels work in a diet, and not feel like my whole life has been ripped from underneath my feet. I'm going to make another video on that, I think, if you guys would like, about mentally handling all these restrictions. I think that's an important video to make. So give this video a thumbs up if you want to see that, and give it a thumbs up anyways because it helps support my channel, and then hit that little red subscribe button because it also helps support my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me.